Hello and welcome to Wyrd Wessex. My name is Andy.
And I'm Craig.
What are we delving into today, Craig?
Well, last year we explored the mysteries of the Falkirk Triangle in Scotland, and today we're venturing further west to investigate the enigmatic Welsh Triangle. Our journey begins during the Cold War, a time of heightened tension, coinciding with the release of the iconic film Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So most of this story is drawn from the book The Welsh Triangle by Peter Padgett. If you're watching, this is the 2018 edition here. We'll get more into the idea of which version it is later. And when he first encountered the cases that would become known as the Welsh Triangle, Peter was then editor of a leading UFO magazine, and he initially dismissed them as misidentified aircraft. After all, why would UFOs choose to visit this remote and sparsely populated region of Pembrokeshire, known for its rugged coastline and rolling hills?
You mean an area renowned for its military bases and secretive training exercises?
Precisely. So the Welsh Triangle, or Dyfed Triangle, primarily focus on a secluded Welsh village named Broadhaven on the west coast of Wales. The majority of reported cases occurred between 1977 and 78, though sightings continue to this day. The area encompassed by the triangle roughly extends from Scomer Island to Pembroke and across to Haverfordwest.
One of the earliest reported cases involved a woman named Louise Bassett. Mrs. Bassett, who owned a gourmet restaurant with her husband, was driving home late one night during a violent thunderstorm. As she drove through the dark countryside, the storm obscured all the stars in the sky. Suddenly, she spotted a bizarre sight in the field. At Idle, Louise later recounted, I saw in the fields on the right a brown mass with a flat blue light intermittently flashing. My first reaction was that there had been an accident further up the road. The thing looked as if it was hovering in the air. My car radio went completely on the blink, and there was a tremendous amount of interference.
The combination of the storm, the eerie lights, and the sudden radio interference must have been terrifying, right?
Yeah, I mean, she continued driving, but the strange lights remained in sight. She describes feeling a sense of unease as she watched them move towards Trimsaran. When she reached the spot where she'd first seen the lights, they had vanished completely. I never saw anything like it before, Louise stated. I've got 20/20 vision, I was 100% sober. I've never believed in this sort of thing before.
Completely mystified by her experience, Mrs. Bassett made some inquiries but could find no rational explanation. The police confirmed that no police cars, fire appliances, or ambulances had been dispatched in the area. Apparently, neither RAF or private helicopters were operating in the area at the time. Widespread radio interference was reported that night, coinciding with Louise's radio failure. Residents across the region flooded radio dealers, the BBC, and the ITA with complaints about severely diminished signal strength. The disruption was so severe that colour television sets reverted to black and white. That's what it says. Not really sure how that works, but that's the story. Such a widespread and significant disruption to radio and television signals was highly unusual and pointed to a powerful, unidentified source of interference.
Just a month later, another intriguing encounter was reported. Artist John Petts, residing in the same area, provided a detailed account of his own experience. It was just after 1 a.m, and John was preparing for bed after a late night at the studio. I'd switched off the lights of the living room, he recalled, and drew back the curtains. Looking southeastwards across the estuary, I noticed a horizontal strip of light, a luminous pale gold, much like the colour of the moon. Initially, John assumed that it was simply moonlight filtering through the clouds. However, upon closer inspection, he realised something extraordinary. I was amazed to see the outline of the light was clear and sharp, far from the woolly edge as it would have been from a cloud, John described. What I saw clearly was a clean-cut shape of even light, pale gold, like that of a weaver's shuttle. It's very poetic. Sharply pointed.
He is an artist.
Yeah, there you go. He said it was sharply pointed at each end, and top and bottom edges straight and parallel. The object remained motionless, seemingly suspended in the air. I wondered if it would rise higher or move to the right or the left, John recounted, but it remained completely still. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished, as if someone had simply switched off a light. The precision and sudden disappearance of the light were unlike anything John had ever witnessed before. That night, John's neighbour also witnessed the strange lights, and as word of his sighting spread, other residents came forward with their own accounts of similar observations. Reports of unusual lights in the sky were not uncommon in the region during that period.
Probably the most infamous story from that time is that of February 4th, 1977, at a primary school in Broadhaven. The children had all been playing football when they spotted a strange dome-shaped object on the other side of some trees, just 200 metres away. The excitement quickly turned to astonishment as David Davis exclaimed, his eyes wide with disbelief, "Look, over there." His friends Michael, David Ward, and Sean Garrison scrambled towards the edge of the field, their hearts pounding. Perched among the trees, a magnificent sight unfolded, a colossal silvery object shimmering in the dull light and having a flashing red light. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, larger than any vehicle they could imagine. "It's a spaceship," Michael breathed, his voice trembling. The children were captivated, a mixture of fear and wonder washing over them as they witnessed this extraordinary sight. But panic set in, and one of the boys raced towards the school, desperate to inform their teacher, Mr. Llewellyn. But the headmaster, initially sceptical, dismissed their claims as childish fantasies. Undeterred, the children continued to observe the incredible sight. The object pulsated with an eerie red light, and to their astonishment, a figure clad in a shimmering suit and helmet emerged from its depths holding some sort of camera. Fear mingled with awe as they watched, mesmerized, before the object vanished as abruptly as it had appeared. News of the encounter spread like wildfire through the school. Mr. Llewellyn, realizing the gravity of the situation, conducted individual interviews with each child. Their accounts were remarkably consistent. He then had them sketch their observations independently, the drawings revealing a striking similarity in the depiction of the craft. "Their stories were the same and have remained the same," Mr. Llewellyn later recounted. "At my age, I'm naturally sceptical, but I'm convinced that they saw something."
In Christmas 1976, but not reported until May 77, due to fear of ridicule, Captain Timothy Sullivan, returning from a dinner party, saw a large circular object flying over 1,000 miles an hour over the river Claddu. He described it as woolly in appearance and covered in lights. I mean, that's pretty fast to see anything, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure how you get that kind of detail if it's moving at 1,000 miles an hour, but
maybe woolly was the best example. Flying sheep, I don't know.
It was Wales.
Oh dear. Well, in May 77, Dennis Thrickle of Pembroke saw a brilliant bright object at 4 a.m, initially believing it was the morning star. Estimated to be 15 metres wide and travelling slowly, he called his wife to the kitchen window. She wasn't too pleased about being woken up so early, but he insisted on sharing the sight. He wanted to make sure he wasn't seeing things, but it immediately disappeared. These sightings demonstrate the diverse range of shapes and behaviours reported for the UFOs in the Welsh Triangle. About the same time, a businessman from Milford Haven saw a zigzagging silvery rugby ball, the size of an aircraft, flying east and low over his home. He studied it through binoculars, exclaiming, "I've laughed about UFOs for ages, but this blasted thing has changed my view completely. I'm not a nutcase."
He thinks the lady doth protest too much.
I love how that's the reaction, like just adding, I'm not a nutcase.
We didn't burn him.
We didn't burn him.
So, one particularly vivid account came from a local resident named Sharon Robbins. On Sunday, May 15th, 1977, Sharon was driving home late at night when she witnessed something extraordinary. As she drove, she noticed a very bright white light high up in the sky. "It looked like a spotlight," Sharon later described. "Initially, it seemed to be directly above a neighbouring bungalow, but as I drove farther down the lane, it became clear that wasn't the case. The lane curves to a dead end, and there's a field with a sloping hill at the end. This light was coming from the top of the hill on the right-hand side. It was moving very slowly to the left." Sharon described the object as a large ball of bright white fire with a smaller, deep orange circular light trailing behind it. "This orange light only lasted for a few seconds and then vanished, leaving this large ball of white," she continued. "This ball hovered across the brow of the hill ever so close to the ground. It would rise up, then lower itself again. Twice it looked as if it had actually landed. Sharon described the object's movements as deliberate and almost playful.
After the landing, this large white light floated across the width of the field, staying at the top,
she recalled.
It's hard to say how big the ball of white was. To me, it seemed about the size of the moon. Obviously, it wasn't the moon. When it reached the other side, it vanished. The light didn't fade at all, it just disappeared. Like the orange light. The whole thing lasted for about 5 minutes.
The slow, deliberate movements of the object and its intermittent changes in altitude certainly suggested an intelligence at work. She continued.
On Monday the 16th, I went to the spot where the object appeared to have landed. The grass was flattened in 2 distinct circular shapes. Only the outlines of rings of the circles remained visible. One circle was significantly larger than the other. I couldn't imagine what else could have caused these markings, and it wasn't just the grass. The stones around the outskirts of these circles were all scratched in the same direction. It was as if something had dragged across them.
3 days later, on the 18th of May, 77, a couple reported witnessing a UFO hover over a house and then land in a nearby field. Examination of the ground revealed flattened grass and a small hole in the soil, but unfortunately, no further details were available.
Perhaps the most extraordinary sighting occurred on August 4th, 1977. A mother and her 13-year-old daughter, who wished to remain anonymous, witnessed an incredible aerial display. They were simply enjoying a quiet afternoon when they noticed 5 bright lights hovering in the sky above Milford Haven. Then something remarkable happened. One of the lights suddenly moved away from the group, heading out to sea. But that wasn't it all. When it reached the coast, it stopped, and 3 smaller lights emerged from it. These smaller craft then began to dart around the area, flying up and down the haven, before returning to the larger craft. It was as if the larger craft was a mothership of some sort, deploying and retrieving smaller probes. The activity didn't stop there, though. 3 of the other larger crafts then flew out to sea at different points and also released smaller lights, like the first one. These smaller crafts then flew back inland, forming a remarkable formation of red, green, and silver discs. In total, they counted 9 objects in the sky. This incredible display continued for over 2 hours. They even witnessed a formation of 6 UFOs flying low up the haven at speeds that far exceeded any known aircraft at the time. This type of activity, with a larger craft deploying and retrieving smaller probes, has been observed in other parts of the world. It suggests a coordinated effort, a methodical search pattern, almost like some kind of reconnaissance mission. It's clear that whatever these UFOs were doing, they were conducting a highly organised and sophisticated operation. It raises the question, what were they looking for? What were they searching for in the skies above the Welsh countryside?
You'd think with all this aerial activity that the local RAF radar would have picked something up, wouldn't you? But when inquiries were made, the answers would always be the same. The RAF wasn't flying that night, and the radar had been switched off. Which seems a remarkable coincidence, as if the UFOs somehow know that they have exclusive use of the airspace over Pembrokeshire.
Yeah, I mean, they don't... I never thought the RAF would turn the radar off. It's just
so like, they say.
All the defences for the country. Yeah, going home. It's fuck it off early Friday, lads. Come on.
8 o'clock, boys.
Switch all that off. Oh.
Yeah, but that wasn't the only strange occurrence. Alongside the sightings, there were reports of something else entirely. Strange bumps that were felt across the region. They are described literally as bumps. And these tremors or vibrations were reported from 76 through to 79.
Sounds a bit like a thing.
Someone did a good episode about that, I think.
I was going to say, you should definitely check that out. Now, presumably these were minor earthquakes or something like that, of that nature, but Peter felt it was important to include them in the book.
Yeah, and it led to some interesting speculation. Some people wondered if the UFO activity was somehow connected to these bumps. Perhaps they were investigating some kind of underground anomaly or even trying to prevent some sort of disaster.
It's not entirely outlandish, though. I mean, you've got reports of UFO sightings coinciding with other unusual events like natural disasters. We discussed this before, didn't we, with the Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant, for example, and more recent events.
Yes, we did. But let's stick to the Welsh Triangle for now, Andy. So these bumps certainly added another layer of mystery to the already strange events unfolding in the region. Reports of the bumps were coming from all over: council engineers, switchboard operators, and even staff at the naval air stations. They described these sudden bangs or tremors. First one, then a pause, then more in quick succession, often at the same time of day or night. Fire crews at a local airport even reported feeling vibrations lasting for minutes that felt as if something was literally running across the roof. Now, as you know, I live near Salisbury Plain, so I know a little bit about these kind of ground shaking things, right?
I mean, you've got like sort of Dorset. When I'm up in Garston Woods, you can sort of just about feel it from there. You know, like the thump of the artillery when they're practicing with the artillery.
Yes. So we hear it. The windows shake, the doors rattle. Some houses I've been in that are slightly closer to the plane, you can feel it. Feels like someone's thumping at the front door or shaking the ground, right? And we do sometimes on the Facebook groups, you'll get someone that's new to the area being like, is anyone else feeling these booms and these rattles outside their house? And everyone's like, yeah, it's the military. And as we sort of said already, like, this is in Pembrokeshire where there are known military bases and training operations. So that seems the most likely cause to me. But yeah, the strange thing, I guess, is that the reports coincide with UFO sightings. And that's kind of where things get a bit more interesting.
So you mean alongside these tremors, people also reporting strange lights in the sky?
Exactly. So strange orange glows, fireballs streaking across the sky, even reports of sparks. It really starts to make you wonder.
A security, oh my God.
I thought whenever you did a quote, you were going to do it in a Welsh accent.
No, I'm not even going to try, because halfway through it will just start sounding Indian and I'll offend two nationalities. A security officer named Kevin Miley was patrolling a building site when he witnessed a truly bizarre event. He saw a bright star-like object flashing red, green and white, hovering over a nearby mountain. The object then began to descend towards Cwmbran. Other witnesses corroborated Miley's reports, saying they'd seen similar things. They reported similar sightings.
So the official explanation for these bumps, the tremors felt across the region, was that they were caused by the Concorde aircraft, but that doesn't really explain the fireballs, does it?
It certainly doesn't. It does make you wonder.
Speaking of unusual sightings, I remember a strange experience we recently had at West Kennet Longbarrow.
You mean the time that we thought, and by we, I mean me insisting and you going, oh yeah, and then we thought we saw something moving across the sky.
Exactly. So we were observing the stars and we noticed this object moving quite rapidly. We even argued which direction it was moving. I thought it was going left. You thought it was going right.
Yeah, then after a few minutes we realised it was an optical illusion. The object was actually stationary. It was the hill itself, because it was sitting quite close to the hill sort of prow in terms of like our line of vision, and that was creating the illusion of it moving.
Yeah, because you think it's moving, and you're actually, I'm looking at the same bit of sky. It hasn't gone anywhere. And
that's it.
Even when you were aware of it, it still did it.
It took me, I had to like look at the outline, because it was quite dark at the time, wasn't it? And I had to look at the outline of some trees and try and clock it to how close it was to those. I was like, no, it's not actually moving, but it really did look like it was moving.
And then we met that alien.
Yeah, we did. The one, or was it a fairy?
I mean, they're probably the same. It's one and the same. You never accept food or drink from a fairy, do you, Andy? And what does Andy do when he's in the barrow and someone says, would you like some whiskey? Yeah,
I think the Fae would offer nicer whiskey than Bell's, or whatever it was.
Wow, I hope he never listens to this. You did tell him about the podcast.
I'm appreciative that I got some whiskey. It's better than no whiskey. But it's just not. It's not like the golden elixir I imagine the Fae realm offering. Maybe they were fairies from Swindon or something.
Anyway, back to Wales. So Stephen Taylor, who was a 17-year-old youth who lived right on the edge of the NATO installation at Broadie in the small hamlet of Penicum. and an encounter that would stay with him forever. It occurred on the 13th of March in 1977. He was returning home after escorting his girlfriend to her house when at around 9 o'clock on a fine evening, he saw a light in the sky. He remembers,
I didn't think much about it.
And then he dropped in to see some friends and mentioned the strange object, but they thought he was joking. So he continues his walk home along the perimeter fence of the American installation, and he recalls
a dog came tearing out of the darkness towards me.
He noticed that the lights of a farmhouse that he was accustomed to seeing were no longer visible on his right-hand side.
He then recalls, then I made out a black shape. It looked about 40 or 50 feet across. I noticed a dim glow around what seemed to be the underside. For a moment, Stephen thought the farmer had built a new silo, and it was that was blocking the view of the farmhouse lights. But as he got closer, he realised it wasn't a silo at all. The farm was completely obscured by a massive, dome-shaped object that had landed in the field, occupying more than half of it.
Yeah, what the fuck was he smoking, and can I have some?
Not if I get to it first. That wasn't all. Within sight of this object was a Ministry of Defence sign warning of trespassing and reminding people that the area fell under the Official Secrets Act. Stephen leant on the gate, observing the UFO, and lit a cigarette, as you do. It might have been the light from his match that alerted the figure, because suddenly he heard a noise like someone stepping on dry leaves. He looked to his right, and there, standing just a few feet away, was a figure.
And what did this figure look like?
Well, Stephen described him as like a skinny human, about 6 feet tall. So possibly a skinny human. Stephen was absolutely terrified. This figure was wearing a one-piece protective silver spacesuit, and that was not the most unsettling part, apparently.
What wasn't, Andy?
Well, he describes it as transparent, but not transparent. It was a strange sensation. He also mentioned there was something like a zip fastener running from the neck to the waist of the suit, and it appeared that the figure was wearing some form of breathing apparatus, and the figure wasn't wearing a visor.
What did he see?
Stephen goes on to describe him as having high cheekbones like an old man's, and large eyes like a fish, round and sort of glazed. He also mentioned that the figure had a box-like device over its mouth, with a thick dark tube leading from it over its shoulder.
Yeah, this is the best bit, Andy. Tell the listeners what Stephen did.
Well, he panicked.
And?
He took a swing at it, and then he noped right the fuck out of there. Just sock it in the jaw and run. He wasn't even sure whether he hit it or not. He never looked back. He just kept on running until he got home. When Stephen arrived home, his pet Pomeranian, normally an affectionate dog, was extremely agitated. Its hair was standing on end, Stephen recalled. I can't explain it. The dog returned to normal the following day, but it was certainly a strange reaction. And can I just say, I really respect the hell out of that. It's like people freeze, people try and talk to it, people run away, people faint. But this guy, no, he's like, sock it in the jaw and run.
Yeah. So in May that year, a 64-year-old man from Milford Haven reported an encounter that was quite extraordinary. He claimed to have seen a giant hovering over the back streets of Milford Haven for a full 40 minutes.
What, like a giant UFO?
Nope. He actually claimed to have seen a large humanoid figure hovering above the town.
And this giant was somehow connected to the UFO?
That's what makes this sighting so unusual. He said he was woken up at 4:45 a.m. by a strange pulsating orange light. He traced the light to a large silver egg-shaped object that was actually swinging back and forth like a pendulum. And hovering above this object, he claimed to have seen this giant.
One particularly frightening incident involving a Coast Guard named Tony Dalton. On the 14th of November 1977, while stationed at Garnfowl near Stumblehead, he witnessed something truly extraordinary. He described seeing a very large, brilliant, yellow-green transparent ball with a fuzzy outline. This object descended from the base of a towering cloud and appeared to float down the hillside. He reported that it emitted intense light for about 3 seconds, and then there was a sudden burst of static on his radio. Then he states that the object slowly rotated around a horizontal axis and seemed to bounce off projections on the ground.
That's quite bizarre. Did it affect anything else?
Yeah, it seemed to have caused quite a disturbance. Cattle and seabirds in the vicinity became agitated. In fact, it was their unusual behaviour that first alerted Dalton. to the presence of this object. He first of all thought it could be a UFO, but a later explanation wrote it off as ball lightning.
May 1978 saw another dramatic incident. A red ball-like UFO appeared over St. Bride's Haven, a sheltered cove near Ripperston Farm. This sighting caused quite a stir among the bathers and holidaymakers enjoying the sunny afternoon.
What happened?
The sphere, which appeared to be flying low along the coast, coming from the direction of Stack Rocks, caused a genuine panic. People were running from the water and the beach was quickly deserted. In another incident, a group of 20 children at Hubberston School in Milford Haven witnessed a remarkable sight. During their lunch break, they observed a cigar-shaped UFO hovering overhead.
It's quite a coincidence, isn't it? This sighting occurred on the same day, I think, as the children at Broadhaven saw their UFO land near the school, as we mentioned earlier.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, quite close to that. Time-wise, another sighting occurred. 9 girls and their teacher from Rottewell School on Anglesey also witnessed a cigar-shaped object hovering over their school during their lunch break.
Now, this is getting interesting. It's starting to sound like some kind of alien invasion, right?
Focused on schools.
Yeah. We don't need no education.
So, just a few days later, Graham Howes, a 13-year-old boy from Pembroke Dock, had an encounter as he arrived early to school. He described seeing a bright silver metallic object hovering over the school. He said it had a dome in the middle, which was dark grey most of the time, but flashed to a dazzling white about every 5 seconds. He even compared it to a plate with a burnt fried egg on it.
That's oddly specific.
Maybe a dude likes eggs. He also mentioned that it had greeny yellowish lights around the rim and what appeared to be retro rockets. He said, looking at the whole thing from the side, it would probably appear cigar-shaped. And despite the foggy conditions, he was certain it wasn't a helicopter or a weather balloon. It stayed completely still all of the time I was looking at it, he explained. It couldn't have been smoke from the power station because it flashed and I had quite a good view of the whole thing.
You know, I'm starting to think that there might be something to this whole UFO thing after all, Andy.
Craig wants to believe.
Don't we just? Take me to your leader. So the following day, things got even more interesting when Mark Jones, a 12-year-old schoolboy from Haverfordwest, together with his friend Llewellyn Edwards, also 12, had an encounter that would definitely make their day. They were near Haverfordwest Grammar School when they spotted a UFO hovering nearby. According to Mark, it was 15-foot long, cigar-shaped, and a sort of orangey-brown fuselage, and it was carrying a flashing blue light.
And what do they do?
Well, being 12-year-old boys, they decided to throw a stone at it.
You're joking, right?
Apparently not. They said that it took off at high speed and vanished. But before the boys ran, the boys ran all the way to the police. Andy's losing it. So they ran all the way to the.
I'm sorry, that just tops the. I think that might even top the dude taking a swing at it. You know, it's just like this UFO turns up and they're like, "Fuck off!" Start lobbing rocks at it.
It's like bloody immigrants.
Oh, bloody hell, I was gonna say, you're not from the valley.
I forgot where I got to now. Oh dear. Yeah, so apparently not. They said it took off at high speed and vanished before the boys ran all the way to the police station to report the incident. The police even drove the boys back to the field to investigate, but of course there's no signs of a UFO.
Rocks are scary, man. This wasn't Mark's first encounter, though, was it?
No, this was the second time in 2 months that Mark had reported seeing a UFO.
I'm seeing this as a little Welsh kid version of that dude in Independence Day that like flies up into the ship, you know? It's just like, remember me, I'm back. Woof.
Remember me, I'm back, boyo.
Boyo. That is the closest we're getting to a Welsh accent.
Yeah, it's bizarre. And also when you think like that might have been our one chance at like communication with life from another planet. And they're like, oh, fuck these guys. They're throwing rocks at us now.
Yeah, that's it. Fucking, sort of tried to land a little while ago and some dude took a swing at me and now these kids are throwing rocks. This place is horrible. Let's go. Do you want to go? Should we go kidnap some rednecks again? Yeah, go on then. Mr. P.D. May of Aberdare reported an intriguing sighting on Monday, the 31st of October.
Ooh, Halloween night, spooky.
Indeed. At approximately 7:15 p.m., his sons Simon and Richard came running into the house saying they'd seen a UFO. As they were playing with other children that night, they saw the object moving slowly towards them and continuing in the direction of Gleneath. It made no sound at all as it passes overhead. According to the boys, it was a circular object having 19 small white lights around the rim, with 3 very bright white lights towards the rear of the object underneath, and a slowly pulsating single red light off-centre towards the front of the object positioned in the direction it was travelling in.
What a detailed description for a couple of young boys.
That's what you get when you don't stop and throw rocks at it and you actually look, I guess.
So Pembroke was the scene of another sighting on the 28th of November the same year when Brian Harnicle, aged 15, and his 14-year-old sister Catherine were walking across Orange Gardens just after 10 p.m. when they sighted a dome-like object in the sky, also carrying 3 white lights. Now, these kids were quick-witted, and Brian stated,
"The object was making its way very slowly in the direction of Freshwater East. I wasn't making any noise, and to gauge the size, I took a penny out of my pocket and held it at arm's length. It covered the UFO completely."
Clever lad.
So they watched the object for about 30 seconds until it went out of sight. Understandably quite excited, they ran home to tell their brother Paul, and they even got in touch with the police, who later called on them for further details, which is very responsible of them.
So it wasn't the first time these children had seen a UFO either, was it?
No, early in the year with their mother, they had attempted to take photographs of an unidentified object that they had seen making its way across the sky at a relatively low altitude. So yeah, before we talk more about the Pembrokeshire sightings, I just wanted to mention a case that's often referred to as the Welsh Roswell, as I feel like they might be connected.
Is that the Barren Mountains incident?
Yeah, on the evening of the 23rd of January in 74, so a few years before the Welsh Triangle stuff, residents of the Berwyn Mountain area in North Wales reported a loud noise and a bright light in the sky. Ufologists, of course, jumped on this, claiming a UFO had crashed, and the British government had covered up the military's recovery of the wreckage, taking it and its occupants to Rudloe Manor and Porton Down. Some tabloids even dubbed it the Roswelsh incident.
I like that, Roswelsh. That's good.
So scientific evidence, however, points to a more mundane explanation, depending on how you see these things. The event coincided with an earthquake, and sightings of a bright meteor were also reported across Wales and northern England. And the declassified Ministry of Defence documents support this theory as well. So
no alien invasion then?
Sadly not.
And what about Rudloe Manor? You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah. So Rudloe Manor has become something of a legend with UFO enthusiasts. It's declassified government files revealed that this isolated base, previously used by the military, was the centre for investigations into UFO sightings in Britain.
Okay. So they're actually actively investigating UFOs there then?
That's what the file suggests. And it led to some speculation, of course. Some believe spacecraft wreckage and perhaps alien bodies were taken for examination. And there's another theory that also comes up in these discussions.
What's that?
Some people believe that any potential wreckage and perhaps even the alien bodies were taken to Porton Down for further investigation.
Porton Down, the military research place where they deal with the scary viruses. Your neck of the woods.
Exactly.
Well, Salisbury way, isn't it?
To be fair, Rudloe Manor's not far. I mean, that's just outside Bath, so they're both fairly close to me. I'm in the middle, really.
We need to go, you know. We'll Naruto run through the fence. They can't stop us all.
Porton Down, you're probably a higher risk of visiting. Technically, Rudloe Manor is no longer military, and people did, what do they call them? Urban explorers and stuff used to go in there. You can find lots of pictures of it online, but it's now in private hands, and it's supposedly being restored by its new owners. Back to its sort of former manor house glory.
Wonder if there's any vaults there, kind of Raiders of the Lost Ark style. Yeah, is there actually any evidence to support that they were researching that at Porton Down?
Nah, it's just speculation, but it certainly adds another layer of intrigue to the Bowen Mountains incident. Anyway, let's just get back to the Welsh Triangle.
All right, go on then.
Yeah, so I've got to be honest here. A large portion of Padgett's book focuses on a story that we're going to cover in the next episode. The rest of the book is filled with similar cases and stories from around the world, which I've omitted to try and keep the focus on Wales. And of course, there's a heavy emphasis on the US military base at Broadie.
That's interesting. Why the focus on the US base?
Well, here's what I didn't mention. Peter Padgett was born in London after the Second World War. His intelligence was noted at an early age, and Peter was co-opted into the British intelligence community and has worked undercover on various tasks and assignments for the past 50 years, while also leading a double life as an author, lecturer, therapist, and international adventurer. Essentially, Peter was in Wales as a spy to investigate the reports, but this would also explain his particular interest in the US base and the activity of the Russians.
Oh, hold on a second. You were saying that Peter Padgett wasn't just a writer, he was an actual spy.
That's what he reveals in the book. He admits to having connections to British intelligence and that his investigation into the Welsh Triangle was part of a larger operation.
So he was sent to Wales under the guise of researching UFOs, but in reality, he was gathering intelligence on the US base at Broadie?
Kind of both. So he was asked to write a book to rival a book on the Bermuda Triangle, but the publishers were unaware that the US and NATO had already requested Peter go to Wales and find out what was going on at the US base and if these UFO sightings were a credible threat. He was likely tasked with investigating the reports, but also keeping an eye on the US base and any potential Russian activity in the region. But it goes even deeper than that. In the later edition of the book from 2018, the one I mentioned at the beginning of the show, he makes a startling revelation. He makes a startling revelation. Andy, what's a relevation?
I don't know.
We don't know, but he makes one anyway.
Oh, that's good. That's good. What's the revelation?
He claims that the US base at Broadie was being interfered with by extraterrestrial technology.
Wow, not much though. Nothing big. I mean, how? So
he describes how the aliens were interacting with the base's computer systems, extracting and reprogramming data.
Well, that's pretty incredible claim. How does he know this?
It doesn't say explicitly, but he does hint at some kind of interaction with these extraterrestrial entities.
My source. Trust me, bro. This is getting more and more bizarre. So the UFOs might not be what they seem. They could be something else entirely.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps they're not even extraterrestrial in origin.
What do you mean?
He mentioned in the book that these aliens have established some kind of underground facility accessed via Stack Rock Islands. And we're going to talk more about some weird things at Stack Rocks in the next episode, which actually probably almost confirms what he's saying. But it seems like this is a crucial location in the whole mystery. But it gets stranger. So Peter claims to have had personal contact with these extraterrestrials. He describes them as Nordics. If you know your alien races, people. So this is the tall, blonde, incredibly beautiful. And he claims to have had contact with them since he was a child.
Nordics, as seen near Silbury Hill. Have you been watching X-Files again, Craig?
Look, I know it sounds crazy, but Padgett goes on to make some even more outlandish claims. He talks about Hitler surviving the war and living in South America. He rewrites human history, revolving around a race of giant beings. He also tells how the Greys made a deal with the US government on a certain number of abductions of US citizens for testing. And he even claims the UK government stole the cure for cancer from him.
To be honest, Craig, I think we might have lost him. I think he sounds like he went off the deep end a little bit there. I'm pretty sure American Horror Story also used the deal with the US government, a certain amount of experiments.
I mean, within the realms of what we're talking here, these are all fairly common tropes that go around. The question is, I guess, really, we may as well get it. We're kind of coming towards the end of this episode, but I guess we should maybe get into how we feel about it. But the style of writing changes quite a lot when you get to the end of the book with the newer section that's just been written. So either this guy's batshit crazy,
or he's been replaced. He's been replaced.
But it's difficult, isn't it? Right. So he says he was a spy, but we don't really have any evidence of that.
Yeah.
But if we believe that he was a spy and that's why he was really there, then do we not have to believe the rest of this stuff? Where do you draw the line?
I don't know. I think there's some lines there. I think there's some lines I'll draw. I don't think the UK government stole the cure for cancer off him, because they stole it from me. Yeah.
In fact, I think I've remembered that slightly wrong, to be honest, because I think he says that the police took it from him when he tried to bring it back into the country. I don't think it was the government.
Okay.
I think I've said that slightly wrong, but still. But that means, why would the police go after him? Someone must have sent them to do it.
That's it, exactly. Like, to my knowledge, it's not illegal to have the mythical cure for cancer. I like this whole sort of going from I'm here to investigate these alien sightings to I've been talking to the Greys, or to the Nordics, since I was a child.
Well, but that's what I'm saying, though. So all this comes out in the new edition of the book. So the original edition of the book didn't give any of this away. He's now saying he's allowed to say these things.
Okay. And by allowed, you mean used all the money from the first edition on crack? Sorry, I shouldn't be so scathing.
Wow. No. Listen, Peter's never coming on the show now.
Ruined it.
I had him booked for next week.
That's all right. I'll stay in the background with a shadowy thing over my face.
So anyway, right. So we've obviously made clear our opinions. I tell you what. So before I round up this, actually, so what do you think about the rest of it?
I think if those are sightings from other people, there definitely does seem to be a spate of them around that certain time. Now, some of that might have been kind of that focused area, like we were talking to Paul about the other day. Everyone starts thinking they've seen it. You're near military bases. I mean, to my knowledge, the first flight of the stealth fighter wasn't for a few years after that, but they might have been testing prototypes. Some of these things could have been prototypes of the stealth technology they went into. You had the blue-bellied blackbird or whatever it was like at that point, I think. So, I think some of that might be because, they don't tend to say, oh yeah, we were flying that night, but can't tell you what. They just say, nope, what else? Because they don't want anyone to know about it. But again, it's if there's that many, and like you got school teachers and school kids saying it, like in broad daylight, it definitely seems like something was going on. What do you think?
Aliens.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So with that, I do want to pick up, because we can get more into what I think maybe next time. But there's a family that appears quite heavily in this book, but I already had another book that tells the story. So I've used another book to write this family's story. So I've omitted them at the moment. And we're going to do, so the next episode is going to be on the Coombs family. And they seem to have been like the focus of a lot of the activity in the Triangle, and potential alien experiments as well.
Yeah, anyone familiar with the Welsh Triangle might have wondered why they hadn't been included, but they are getting their own episode, as Craig said.
Yes. And if anyone's watched, and if you haven't, you've got time now. Look, there's a couple of weeks before the next episode. The Netflix show Encounters, the very first episode. So you don't even have to watch the whole series. I mean, I thought it was a really good series. But if you go for the first episode, you'll know parts of this story already. Parts we've already told, and parts we're going to tell next time.
I quote Becky, I'll have it on in the background while you watch it. So, I'm going to watch it. But yeah, it's been on my list for a little while. It's yeah, right after Vox Machina. That's my next one. We should probably do some weird news, I guess.
Yeah, what you got for me?
So I can go light-hearted, or I can go darker. Um,
Dark-hearted.
dark-hearted, dark-hearted. I
Go
have a heart,
dark-eyed.
but it's black and shriveled. Um,
I don't know. It's up to you. I'll let you choose.
well, as this is the first episode that we're recording in 2025,
Yes.
I thought, as is tradition, I would start off with a few predictions.
All right, but then this time, what we have to do at the end of the year is actually double check these predictions because we've done predictions before, but never like checked them
Yeah.
again at the end.
Well,
You know?
this is one of the guys that we did talk about at the beginning of the year, actually. This is from the Metro, and it is that guy that was dubbed the new Nostradamus, like every other fucking clairvoyant.
Yeah.
He is Craig Hamilton Parker, and did he did predict, I believe, the Donald Trump assassination attempt,
Okay.
which we mentioned.
Orchestrated by the aliens, I think we said.
Exactly, but not the Nordics, that was the Greys.
Mm.
But yeah, so he also apparently predicted the COVID-19 pandemic and Brexit. But he's 70 years old. He has been practicing the psychic arts since his early 20s after being inspired by Nadi astrologist during a visit to India. Now, outlining his predictions for the year, he told the Metro it's going to be a politically bumpy year in the UK. I've had this vision recently seeing Keir Starmer being ousted from government. I think Yvette Cooper will then step in as the caretaker Prime Minister for a while. It's going to be even worse here for the Tories as well, and we'll see major defections to reform from big names like Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg, who are unhappy with Kemi Badenoch. This will mean not as much to our non-UK listeners. He went on to predict more revelations within the royal family. He predicts, apparently he predicted the cancer diagnosis of Kate and Charles. But he says that Harry and Meghan will get divorced. There's been some talk about this already, I know, but I first predicted this when they got together first. Harry will leave the US and then return to the UK, but will have more of an under-the-radar kind of role. Charles will welcome him back with open arms and forgive him. With William, it will take more time. It's looking good for Charles, but Camilla will experience more health troubles, and Prince Andrew could end up being more alienated further from the rest of the family. He also predicts in the US, he's got a vision of Trump stepping out of a car and being shot at, but surviving that one as well. And a lot of Americans will feel they have a strong president, but he sees Trump and Musk's relationship deteriorating fast. I'm seeing lots of protests in my vision too over controversial policies passed. We are going to see woke rules and laws upturned, I think. The Mexican wall built and removal of lots of illegal immigrants. Harvey Weinstein is also going to die, and with this, more celebrity scandals are going to emerge linked to P. Diddy. In terms of world events, Craig also predicts that tension will continue between China and Taiwan. He believes the US will also try and broker a deal between Ukraine and Russia, as well as Israel and Palestine, but tension between Iran and Israel will soon worsen. He also has vision of fire, smoke, and protests in Paris. He sees a dramatic shift to the right in lots of European countries, including France.
None of this is that startling, really.
No, the more I'm reading this, and I gave it a quick once over, I like to be pleasantly surprised by some of these weird news things. So quite often I'll read a bit and go, yeah, that looks good. You know, I kind of want to
I know,
react.
but on the last episode, Andy, I said that they predicted that aliens are going to contact us, and you've gone with all this boring political.
Okay, all right. It does round up some other predictions as well.
Hang on, but did we decide? Is this your light-hearted one or is this your dark one?
Yeah, this has got a bit dark. Okay.
Yeah. So this is the light one.
Yeah, trust me. Technological breakthroughs will dominate, with Bitcoin predicted to exceed thousands of dollars. He does predict a new pandemic. Space exploration. He says there will be breakthrough in space travel with the advancement of reusable rocket technology spearheading humanity's push beyond Earth. He predicts it will be the dawn of a new era of space exploration, as well. And yeah, that's about it. I'm kind of regretting this one now.
All right, I'll tell you what. I'll do my weird news, which is quite a light one, right?
Yeah.
And then me and Andy are recording a bonus episode exclusively for our Patreon. But before we do that, we'll do a little 10-minute chat just randomly for the Patreon, and you can tell them what your dark story was.
Yeah, sure thing. I was going to save that for the next episode, but that will do too.
And you can do more work, Andy. Come on, I'm cracking the whip.
But no, just to cap off on this, I think a lot of this seems to be it seems to me like this chap has actually just knocked it up like a few days before, because with like Trump and Elon Musk, you can see like Elon Musk has basically moved into Trump's house more or less at the moment, and it's he's sort of getting sick of him. You can see a load of stuff like that going on. They've already talked about that, so I'm calling it as a I'm calling it bullshit. Yeah. There is an AI version. They have an AI version, I believe, of
what that predicts.
Yeah. So you remember Baba Vanga?
Yeah.
So I'll quickly touch on this because essentially the headline, and this one's in the Express. AI Baba Vanga's 2025 predictions.
You know what? I'm more scared of this than the other one. Now I'm like, do I want to hear this?
So an artificial intelligence channeling the clairvoyant is reported to have predicted the start of the end times in 2025. Jesus Christ. All right. If you want to hear the the prediction of the end times,
save it for the Patreons.
Save it for the Patreon.
Pay us now while you still can.
It's the only way to avoid the end times is get a heads up and join the Patreon so you can know what our AI overlord is predicting for 2025.
Yeah, so I'll do my weird news, and it's quite a short one.
I will add, just as the last thought, it then goes on to the AI having Baba Vanga having predicted up to the year 5079. So I figure it can't be exactly the start of the end times if we go up to 5079.
Depends which one you believe, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so I thought I'd keep it fairly light. You know what I'm like with these things. They can be a bit dark sometimes, and it's a new year and trying to be positive for the year. So I took my story from a source we've not used, I don't think, before.
Go on.
News Round.
Okay.
Which is I suppose, I was going to say children's, but I think it's young adults as well, right? It's just kind of kids news almost from the BBC. Anyway, so the headline is "Stop Sticking Googly Eyes on Sculptures, US City Tells Residents." A city council in the US has asked people to stop sticking plastic eyes on its sculptures around the city, saying it's costing a lot to remove them. The googly eyes appeared on a number of artworks around the city of Bend in Oregon, including a statue of two deer and a metal sphere. On a post on social media, the council asked whoever was responsible to cut it out. While the googly eyes placed on the various art pieces around town might give you a chuckle, it costs money to remove them with care to not damage the art, it said.
I'm just going to say you can't prove it was me.
I mean, you haven't been in the US lately. So. It says most people that commented in support of the googly eyes, with one social media user saying, but they are so funny, and another saying the googly eyes have to stay. The council also said that in the past, other decorations like Santa hats and wreaths have been added, but that this was different.
I have here, for those not watching, a big box of about 500 googly eyes that I may or may not have gotten for that exact purpose.
The council says it spent $1,500, which is about £1,190, on removing the googly eyes. They need to find a cheaper member of staff.
I was going to say, just go along with a little knife and just flick it off, you know?
I'll do that job for that.
Right? It depends how many there were, though, you know?
To be fair, I wouldn't remove them. They'd tell me to, and I go, nah, leave it. It's all right.
Oh, I can't remember who. Was it a statue? Oh, I can't remember who it was a statue of. It might have been like Gandhi or someone like that. Someone put little laser pointers in the eyes, and it looks fucking terrifying. Like at night, she's like got his hand up like that, just blazing laser eyes. No, I got these for that, and also to put on my Kagatillo, which anyone that watched the Christmas shorts would have seen the pooping log. I needed some googly eyes for that.
Fair enough. So we're going to carry on talking shit for like another 10 minutes. But we're going to end the episode here. And if you want to carry on listening to where this conversation goes, you're going to have to sign up to Patreon. So till next time.
Stay weird. And if you want to stick around, you get to stay weirder. So first of all, I want to address the...